Did you know that studies show nearly 1 in 20 people has strong narcissistic traits, enough to damage every relationship they touch? That means if you've ever been stuck in a toxic couple, or felt trapped in a toxic relationship, chances are you've already crossed paths with a narcissist. And the most dangerous part? You rarely see the wound you've caused them, because the narcissist hides it behind manipulation, silence, or rage. Psychologists estimate that over 60% of survivors of narcissistic abuse report symptoms of anxiety, depression, or even PTSD. Why? Because when you hurt a manipulator, even without meaning to, their reaction is never simple. It's calculated. Sometimes it's explosive. Sometimes it's quiet. But it's always designed to make you doubt yourself. And if you've ever felt like you were the one losing your mind in a toxic relationship, you're not alone, and it's not your fault. What you're about to discover is the truth they never want you to know. How to recognize the signs you've touched a narcissist's hidden wound, how they mask their pain, and how you can finally protect yourself from their games. If any of this speaks to you, even a little, do me a favor. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs it, write thank you in the comments, or subscribe. It changes everything for what comes next. When Carl Jung was asked about human suffering, he often repeated that what you resist persists. Freud, on the other hand, observed that the ego is built on fragile foundations that can shatter when reality collides with self-image. The narcissist embodies this paradox in the most extreme way. On the surface, they look untouchable, confident, even larger than life. But behind that mask lies what Seneca once called a wound of the soul. Invisible, yet constantly bleeding. And here is the first truth you need to understand. Narcissists hide their pain not because they are invincible, but because their entire identity depends on keeping it hidden. Think about this for a moment. Studies in neuroscience from the National Institute of Mental Health have shown that narcissistic personalities register social rejection in the same regions of the brain as physical pain. That means when you bruise their ego, their brain reacts as if you had punched them in the chest. Yet they will not show it. They cannot, because to reveal vulnerability would be to lose control, and control is their oxygen. According to a 2021 meta-analysis by Campbell and Miller, nearly 6% of the population exhibits narcissistic traits strong enough to affect relationships. That means in every group of people you know, there is at least one person carefully hiding this invisible wound. But why is this pain so secret, so carefully hidden? Imagine a child who grows up never being truly seen for who they are, only rewarded for achievements or punished for weakness. Over time, they build a false self, a kind of armor. Freud called this a defense mechanism. Jung described it as the persona, and modern therapists like Dr. Ramani Durvasula explain it as a survival strategy. The narcissist doesn't just wear a mask, they become the mask. The invisible wound is the emptiness beneath it, the part of them that once longed for love, but learned instead to manipulate admiration. If you hurt them, you're not just poking their pride, you're tearing at that mask, and beneath it lies terror, shame, and a fear so deep that they would rather destroy a relationship than let you see it. You've probably experienced this without realizing. Maybe you made a casual remark, and suddenly their mood shifted. They dismissed you coldly, or perhaps exploded in anger. You thought, why such an extreme reaction? What you didn't know is that your words found their wound. Neuroscientist Dr. Martin Lindquist from Johns Hopkins discovered that the amygdala, the brain's fear center, goes into overdrive when a narcissist perceives even the smallest rejection. This isn't rational. It's survival. That is why you can never see them admit pain. They cover it instantly with rage, arrogance, or silence. It is camouflage, and it is nearly perfect. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But narcissists cannot live by this wisdom. Their pain depends entirely on outside events, on how others see them, on whether they are admired or not. This is why they hide their suffering so fiercely. To show it would be to admit that they are dependent, fragile, and human, things they cannot allow themselves to be. Their invisible wound is their dependence on validation. Without it, they collapse. Now, here's the tension you must recognize. You might believe that when you hurt a narcissist, you will see it clearly. Tears, sadness, or vulnerability. But you won't. Instead, you'll see the opposite: anger, arrogance, sudden detachment. These are not signs of strength, but signals of pain hidden behind the mask. In fact, a 2018 study in the Journal of Personality Disorders revealed that narcissists reported the highest levels of shame of any personality type, but almost never admitted it openly. So the wound is real, measurable, and devastating, but always concealed. And this brings us to you. If you have ever walked away from an argument wondering if you went too far, if you ever doubted whether you actually hurt them or if they were simply manipulating you, understand this. Both can be true at once. You hurt them, but they turn that pain into a weapon, masking it with rage or withdrawal. That is their way of protecting the wound from being seen. And now you know, the wound exists, it is deeper than you imagined, and it is always there, waiting for the next bruise to remind them of their hidden shame. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That line could have been written about narcissists. Because when you hurt them, the signs don't appear in the obvious ways. They slip out in fragments, in micro-expressions, in subtle contradictions. And if you don't know how to read them, you will miss them. You'll think everything is fine, or worse, that you're the one who did something wrong. But psychology, neuroscience, and even ancient wisdom show us otherwise. There are always signs, small cracks in the mask that reveal when you've touched their fragile ego. One of the first clues is silence. Not peaceful silence, but a heavy, punishing quiet. Research on emotional withdrawal shows that when narcissists feel injured, they often respond by withholding communication, affection, or attention. It's called the silent treatment, and it has been documented as one of the most common forms of manipulation. Freud believed that silence, in this context, isn't neutral, it's a weapon. It tells you, you don't matter enough for me to acknowledge. If you've ever been left confused, replaying a conversation, wondering why they suddenly vanished into cold distance, that's not random. That's the invisible wound showing itself through absence. Another sign is anger that feels disproportionate. A 2010 study in the Journal of Research in Personality found that narcissists are up to 300% more likely than the average person to display narcissistic rage when their ego is threatened. It doesn't need to be a direct insult, a casual suggestion, a reminder of their mistakes, even you succeeding at something they secretly envy. Any of these can trigger an explosion. Seneca, 2,000 years ago, described anger as a brief madness. For narcissists, it is exactly that, a mask that slips, revealing the chaos beneath. Their rage is not just anger at you, it's terror of being exposed. But not all signs are loud. Some are buried in body language. A flicker in the eyes, a clenched jaw, a forced laugh. Paul Ekman, the psychologist famous for studying micro-expressions, proved that even trained liars cannot fully hide flashes of real emotion. When you hurt a narcissist, watch closely. The smile may arrive a second too late. The compliment may sound rehearsed. Their hands may fidget in ways that betray the storm inside. Neuroscience explains this. The prefrontal cortex can try to control the mask, but the amygdala reacts instantly to perceived threat, leaking out these small tells. You may not notice them in the moment, but your gut often does. That uneasy feeling you get. It's not paranoia. It's perception picking up on the hidden wound. Sometimes the sign is contradiction. They say you didn't hurt them, but then they bring up the same incident days, weeks, or even months later. Jung would call this a complex, an emotional knot that keeps resurfacing until it's acknowledged. If you've ever been blindsided by a narcissist suddenly revisiting something you thought was long forgotten, understand this. You touched their ego, and they never let it go. They replay it internally, over and over, until it becomes part of their hidden narrative against you. And then there is projection. Freud first coined this term, but modern therapy confirms it as one of the narcissist's favorite defenses. When you hurt them, they may accuse you of being the one who is jealous, insecure, or manipulative. It's confusing, even maddening, because suddenly you're on trial for the very things they secretly feel. This isn't coincidence. It's psychological sleight of hand. By projecting their pain onto you, they both deny their wound and punish you for noticing it. Here is the paradox. Narcissists cannot admit pain, but they cannot fully hide it either. The signs leak through like light through cracks in a wall. Silence that feels like punishment. Anger that burns too hot for the moment. Eyes that betray the truth for half a second. Contradictions that resurface long after you thought the conflict was buried. Accusations that mirror exactly what they fear inside. Each of these is evidence, each a fingerprint of the wound they hide. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, once reminded his students, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Narcissists live in the opposite reality. What happens to them is unbearable, so they must control the reaction, not by healing, but by disguising. When you know the signs, you begin to see through the disguise. You realize that the silence, the rage, the projection are not random storms. They are signals. They tell you that you've touched their ego, whether they admit it or not. And when you can read these signals, you are no longer confused. You are no longer caught in their game. You begin to see the truth hidden in plain sight. Sigmund Freud once wrote that the ego is not the master in its own house. For narcissists, this is more true than anywhere else. They build a mask so polished, so convincing, that even they begin to believe in it. But when you hurt them, when your words or actions land deeper than they expected, that mask begins to crack. And through those cracks, emotions leak out that they cannot fully control. You've seen it before, though maybe you didn't realize what you were looking at. A flash of rage, a sudden withdrawal, a laugh that doesn't fit the situation. These are not accidents. They are emotional responses too raw to stay hidden, even for someone who lives their entire life behind a facade. The first and most obvious crack is anger. Psychologists call it narcissistic rage, and it is one of the most studied phenomena in clinical psychology. A study by Rodewald and Morf in the Journal of Personality found that narcissists experience greater spikes in cortisol, the body's stress hormone, when criticized than almost any other personality type. This isn't just irritation. It's biology. Their nervous system goes into fight or flight mode, their heart rate accelerates, their amygdala floods their brain with survival signals. The anger you see is the body's desperate attempt to defend the fragile ego inside. Seneca described anger as a fire from within that consumes everything around it. And when it comes to narcissists, that fire is both shield and sword. They wield it to scare you into silence, but it also betrays how deeply you struck them. But rage is not the only slip. Just as telling is their retreat into cold detachment. They may suddenly become icy, distant, almost robotic. Carl Jung explained this kind of reaction as a shadow response, when the parts of the psyche we repress break through in distorted form. The narcissist's mask of superiority cannot tolerate the sting of humiliation, so it collapses into numbness. They stop speaking, stop looking at you, maybe even disappear for days. To you, it looks like indifference. In reality, it is shock, a nervous system shutting down because it cannot process the pain. Modern neuroscience confirms that this freeze response is as primal as fight or flight, a survival mechanism activated when danger feels overwhelming. Another crack shows itself in contradictions. Have you ever noticed how a narcissist will say you didn't hurt them, yet a minute later they bring up the same offense with biting sarcasm? This isn't forgetfulness. It's cognitive dissonance, the mental tension of holding two truths at once. I am invulnerable, and I am hurt. Leon Festinger, who first coined the term in the 1950s, described how dissonance creates psychological discomfort so intense that people will twist reality to escape it. For narcissists, the twist is denial on the surface but obsession underneath. Their words say they are unaffected. Their tone, their repeated references, their subtle digs tell another story. And then there is projection, the most insidious of all. Freud called projection one of the ego's strongest defenses, and for narcissists it is almost instinctual. When you wound them, they may accuse you of doing exactly what they feel. You're the jealous one. You're the manipulative one. You're the one who can't handle criticism. This is not random cruelty. It's displacement. They cannot face their own wound, so they export it onto you. Jung warned that what we deny in ourselves we see in others, and nowhere is this clearer than in the narcissist's projections. When they accuse you, they reveal what they are unwilling to admit about themselves. Even humor can be a crack in the mask. A cutting joke, a mocking laugh, a sudden burst of sarcasm. On the surface, it looks like confidence. But psychologists like Paul Ekman remind us that incongruent laughter is often a leak of discomfort. If you've ever felt stung by a joke that seemed off, trust your instinct. It wasn't harmless humor. It was pain disguised as ridicule. What makes these cracks so dangerous is that they confuse you. One moment, the narcissist seems powerful and composed. The next, they are exploding, withdrawing, contradicting themselves, or hurling accusations that don't fit. You wonder, did I actually hurt them? Or are they manipulating me? The answer is both. You did wound them, and they are trying desperately to cover it up. The emotions slipping through are proof. Proof that the mask is not unbreakable. Proof that beneath the performance lies a fragile self terrified of being seen. Epictetus once said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of their significance." For narcissists, every perceived slight is interpreted as existential. Every bruise to their ego feels like annihilation. That is why the mask cracks, why emotions they cannot control spill into the open. And now you know what to look for. The rage, the silence, the contradictions, the jokes that cut too deep. These are not random moods. They are the sound of the mask breaking under the weight of a wound they will never admit to you. Carl Jung warned that where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, their love is lacking. This single line captures the heart of the narcissist's greatest fear, losing control. If you've ever felt like a narcissist needs to dominate every conversation, every decision, every emotional exchange, it isn't simply arrogance. It is survival. Because for them, control is not about preference, it is about existence. Strip away their ability to control the narrative, and they begin to crumble. What terrifies them more than rejection, more than failure, is the unbearable feeling of being powerless. Freud described the ego as a fragile negotiator between reality and desire. For narcissists, this negotiation is tilted entirely toward desire. The desire to be admired, envied, obeyed. The moment reality challenges that desire, the negotiation collapses. And the fear of collapse, of being unmasked as ordinary, is what drives their obsession with control. Neuroscience confirms this. Brain imaging studies show that when narcissistic personalities perceive loss of dominance in a social situation, their anterior cingulate cortex, the region linked to distress, lights up in the same way as physical pain. Losing control isn't uncomfortable for them. It's torment. You may have seen it in real life. The moment you refuse to play their game, when you don't react to their provocation, something shifts. Their calm exterior falters. They lash out or retreat. Why? Because by not reacting, you've stolen their favorite weapon, your emotional response. Dr. Ramani Durvasula, one of the leading experts on narcissism, explains that the narcissist's control depends on what psychologists call emotional supply. They control you not with chains, but with your reactions. Anger, tears, guilt, fear, all of these give them power. The absence of reaction feels like suffocation. This is why their greatest fear is not you walking away, but you walking away without emotion. Seneca once advised, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But narcissists live trapped in imagination. They constantly imagine being abandoned, humiliated, replaced. Their fear of losing control is not only about the present moment, it's about the stories they invent about what might happen. If you see them suddenly paranoid, accusing you of betrayal, questioning your loyalty without cause, this is not about you. It's about their terror of a future where they are powerless, left behind, forgotten. Control gives them the illusion that the future can't hurt them. Losing it makes the wound unbearable. This fear also explains why narcissists rewrite history. Maybe you remember a fight one way, but days later, they insist it happened differently. Or they accuse you of words you never said. This isn't just lying, it's psychological warfare known as gaslighting. By controlling the narrative, they protect themselves from facing the truth. That they were hurt, that they were wrong, that they are not as invincible as they pretend. Gaslighting is their way of stitching the mask back together, repairing the cracks you caused when you touched their wound. But the irony is brutal. The very control they fight to maintain is what pushes people away. A 2017 study from Personality and Individual Differences revealed that narcissists often sabotage their own relationships because of this need for dominance. They want intimacy yet fear it. They crave admiration, yet destroy the people who give it. And when those people finally leave, the narcissist sees it not as the consequence of their own behavior, but as proof of betrayal. The cycle repeats because the fear of losing control keeps them locked in a prison of their own making. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Narcissists cannot live by this truth. Their mind is not enough. They need to bend outside events to fit their ego. And when you deny them that, when you refuse to be controlled, you force them to face their deepest terror, that they are not in charge, that their worth is not absolute, that they can be hurt like anyone else. This realization is unbearable to them, and it is why they fight so viciously to prevent it. So the next time you wonder why a narcissist reacts so violently when you set a boundary, remember this: it is not just defiance they are fighting. It is fear. Fear of being exposed, powerless, ordinary. Fear of seeing themselves without the mask. That fear drives everything: the rage, the manipulation, the projection, the endless need for control. And in those moments, you are seeing the truth they try hardest to hide. Not strength, not superiority, but fragility disguised as power. Nietzsche once warned, Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. That warning echoes in the strange paradox you face with narcissists. Sometimes they explode in vengeful fury, and other times they disappear into chilling silence. Two opposite reactions, both triggered by the same thing, their wounded ego. To understand this paradox, you need to see how revenge and silence are not contradictions for them, but two sides of the same coin. Both are designed to achieve the same goal: to restore their sense of control and to protect the invisible wound you've touched. Let's begin with revenge. When a narcissist feels humiliated, their brain doesn't interpret it as a simple slight. Neuroscientists studying aggression at the University of Michigan discovered that narcissistic personalities show exaggerated activation in the striatum, the brain's reward center, when imagining scenarios of retaliation. In other words, just thinking about revenge gives them a hit of dopamine, the same neurotransmitter released during pleasure or achievement. This is why their rage feels so consuming. It's not just emotional, it's chemical. Retaliation becomes a twisted form of relief. Freud would describe this as the return of the repressed, their buried shame morphing into an external attack to mask the internal wound. You've likely witnessed it. Maybe they insulted you in public to humiliate you after you made a small criticism. Maybe they spread rumors, undermined your work, or used social media as a weapon. The revenge doesn't always come as a dramatic explosion. Often it's calculated, subtle, even delayed. A cutting remark days later, a betrayal when you least expect it. Researchers call this narcissistic injury leading to narcissistic rage, and the evidence is clear. Once the wound is touched, revenge becomes a way to prove, both to themselves and others, that they still hold power. Seneca described revenge as the wild justice of a weak mind, and in narcissists, this wildness is their attempt to cover weakness with aggression. But what about silence? Why does the same wounded ego sometimes retreat into cold withdrawal instead of attacking? Here lies the paradox. Silence is also revenge. Psychologists call it emotional withholding, but survivors know it as the silent treatment. It's a form of psychological punishment designed to make you feel invisible, guilty, and desperate for reconciliation. A 2014 study published in Communication Monographs found that the silent treatment activates the same regions of the brain as physical pain in the person receiving it. That's why it hurts so much. The narcissist knows this, maybe not consciously in scientific terms, but instinctively. By withholding words, affection, acknowledgement, they inflict pain while keeping their hands clean. And silence does something else. It preserves the mask. If they exploded every time, their fragility would be obvious. But silence allows them to maintain the illusion of control. By refusing to engage, they send the message: I'm above this. You don't affect me. Yet the irony is cruel. The silence itself is proof of the wound. If they truly were unaffected, they would not need to punish you with absence. Their quiet is not strength, it is rage in disguise. Carl Jung believed that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. For narcissists, silence and revenge reveal the same truth. They cannot regulate their own pain. They need to export it, either by attacking you directly or by withdrawing in a way that forces you to suffer. In both cases, the goal is the same: to shift the unbearable weight of shame away from themselves and onto you. But here is what you must see clearly. Revenge and silence are not about justice. They are about equilibrium. When you bruise their ego, you destabilize their inner world. Their retaliation, whether through venomous words or punishing quiet, is an attempt to rebalance that world, to reassert their dominance. And that is why the paradox exists. Sometimes balance requires fire. Sometimes it requires ice. Both serve the same master, the fear of powerlessness. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." The tragedy is that narcissists live in the opposite reality. They believe the best revenge is to make you carry the pain they cannot face. Their silence is a dagger without motion. Their fury is a storm without reason. And until you understand this paradox, you will be caught between fire and ice, never realizing that both are simply mirrors of the same invisible wound. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." This is not just philosophy, it is survival advice when you are entangled with a narcissist. Because after you hurt them, whether intentionally or not, the storm that follows can leave you shaken, doubting yourself, and questioning your own reality. Their rage, their silence, their projections, all of it is designed to shift the weight of their wound onto you. If you are not careful, you will carry it, thinking it belongs to you. Protecting your mind and soul is not just about defense. It is about reclaiming the truth of who you are before their chaos pulls you into their world. The first protection is awareness. Studies in neuroscience show that simply naming an emotion reduces its intensity. UCLA researcher Matthew Lieberman demonstrated that when people labeled feelings like anger or fear, the amygdala's activation decreased, and the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, regained control. This is crucial for you. When a narcissist lashes out or withdraws after being hurt, your instinct is to take it personally, to scramble for answers. Instead, step back. Name what's happening. This is projection. This is rage. This is silence as punishment. By naming it, you protect yourself from absorbing it. You turn the invisible chaos into something visible and manageable. The second protection is boundaries. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, taught, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself can overpower my will." Boundaries are your will in action. When the narcissist tries to punish you with silence, do not beg for their words. When they attack with rage, do not match their fire. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They say, "This is what I allow in. This is what I keep out." Modern therapy confirms this. Patients who practice consistent boundaries experience lower levels of anxiety and higher self-esteem in relationships with narcissistic personalities. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are self-preservation. The third protection is perspective. Freud believed that repetition compulsion, the tendency to repeat painful patterns, keeps us locked in cycles we do not understand. Narcissists thrive on this compulsion. They provoke, you react, they punish, you apologize. The cycle repeats until you no longer know who you are. Breaking it requires perspective. Step outside the immediate moment and ask, is this reaction truly mine, or am I carrying their wound? This single question can disrupt the cycle. It reminds you that the storm you are caught in is not born within you, but projected onto you. Another form of protection is cultivating resilience. Modern neuroscience proves that the brain is plastic, it can rewire itself. Practices like mindfulness and meditation literally strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for regulation and clarity. John Kabat-Zinn, a pioneer in mindfulness research, found that regular practice decreases stress hormones and increases emotional stability. For you, this means the more you ground yourself in presence, the less you are swept away by their manipulations. The narcissist thrives on reaction. Mindfulness robs them of it, and perhaps the most powerful protection is philosophy itself. Seneca reminded us, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them." When you adopt this stance, the narcissist loses their grip. Their words may sting, but they do not define you. Their silence may feel cold, but it does not erase your worth. Their rage may be loud, but it is not truth. Philosophy is not abstract here, it is armor. It reframes the battlefield, so you are no longer a pawn in their game. There is also strength in community. Narcissists isolate you because isolation makes you easier to control. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that people in supportive communities recover from emotional abuse faster and with greater resilience. Sharing your story, even with one trusted friend or therapist, disrupts the narcissist's greatest weapon, secrecy. The more you speak your truth, the less power their narrative holds over you. But protection is not just defense. It is transformation. Carl Jung believed that what we do not make conscious controls us. By learning to recognize the narcissist's wound and refusing to carry it as your own, you not only protect yourself, you grow stronger. You begin to see patterns you never noticed. You learn to stand in your own power without needing validation. You realize that their chaos is not your destiny. Protecting your mind and soul after hurting a narcissist is not easy. The storm they unleash is designed to confuse you, to break you down. But when you combine awareness, boundaries, perspective, resilience, philosophy, and community, you stand firm. You discover what Marcus Aurelius meant, that happiness is not about what they do to you, but about the thoughts you choose to keep. And in that choice lies freedom, the kind of freedom they can never touch. Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." Those words are the essence of transformation, and they matter more than ever when you have faced the storm of a narcissist. Because the truth is, encounters with them will wound you. Their rage will shake you, their silence will confuse you, their manipulation will leave scars. But scars are not the end of the story. They can be the beginning of something extraordinary. The same pain that once broke you can become the forge where your strength is created. And that is the lesson the narcissist never learns. While they hide their wound, you have the power to transform yours. Let's be clear, transformation doesn't happen the moment the conflict ends. At first, you feel drained, maybe even destroyed. Freud described trauma as an unassimilated experience, something too overwhelming to process at once. That is why, in the aftermath, your mind replays the arguments, the silence, the accusations. You ask yourself endless questions. Did I overreact? Was I too harsh? Am I the problem? But here is where transformation begins, in choosing to face those questions with clarity instead of guilt. The fact that you are even asking them shows you have a conscience, something the narcissist lacks. That conscience, painful as it feels, is proof of your strength. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies on post-traumatic growth reveal that up to 70% of people who endure emotional abuse report developing greater inner strength, deeper relationships, and clearer priorities afterward. In other words, pain can rewire the brain, not just in destructive ways, but in transformative ones. You begin to see what truly matters, who truly values you, and most importantly, what you will never tolerate again. This clarity is not weakness. It is power. Marcus Aurelius, facing endless trials as emperor, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The narcissist's chaos can become exactly that, the obstacle that turns into your path of strength. But how does this happen? It happens when you stop searching for validation from the one who hurt you and start seeking wisdom within yourself. Seneca taught that true freedom comes not from external approval, but from mastering one's own mind. Every time you resist the urge to beg for their affection, every time you hold firm in your boundaries, you are mastering yourself. And in mastering yourself, you become untouchable in a way they can never be. They live chained to the opinions of others. You begin to live anchored in your own truth. It also happens when you embrace the lessons hidden in the pain. Jung reminded us that the shadow, the dark part of life, is not to be denied but integrated. The narcissist forces you to confront parts of yourself you may have ignored, your tolerance for mistreatment, your longing for approval, your fear of rejection. Facing these is uncomfortable, even brutal. But in doing so, you bring them into the light. You learn to say no without guilt. You learn to walk away without shame. You learn that love is not proven by how much you endure, but by how much you respect yourself. These lessons do not just protect you from narcissists in the future, they reshape your entire life. And then comes the deepest transformation, turning the pain into purpose. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the horrors of concentration camps, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. This does not mean the narcissist's actions were justified. It means that your response can elevate the experience. You can use the lessons of endurance to strengthen your relationships, to raise your children differently, to support others who are walking through the same fire. Pain becomes fuel. Wounds become wisdom. The narcissist's invisible wound keeps them trapped. They spend their lives hiding, lashing out, and manipulating to avoid transformation. But you have the ability to choose differently. You can face the wound, integrate it, and emerge stronger than before. That is the ultimate paradox. They fight to never appear weak, and in doing so they remain fragile forever. You allow yourself to be broken, and in that breaking you become whole. So when you look back on the moments you hurt the narcissist and feared you might not recover from the fallout, remember this: those encounters were not wasted. They were the fire that tempered you, the mirror that forced you to see yourself clearly, the challenge that awakened strength you didn't know you had. Epictetus said, "Difficulties show what men are." The narcissist's difficulty shows their fragility. Your difficulty shows your capacity for growth. And in the end, it is you, not them, who walks away transformed, carrying wisdom, resilience, and a strength no mask can ever imitate.